All right, strap yourselves in because we're going deep into the 40K timeline. You came here for the simple version, right? No worries, we got you.
Definitely a lot to unpack.
You think. There are like hundreds of books. How are you supposed to keep it all straight?
Right.
But that's why we're here. This is going to be like the greatest hits, just the essentials, so you can understand how this whole universe went so sideways.
Yeah, humanity's not doing so hot in the 41st millennium, that's for sure.
Okay, so let's rewind way back, like way, way back, 60 million years before any Space Marines are even a thing. It all starts with this crazy thing called the War in Heaven. Have you heard about this?
Most people haven't. It's ancient history, but it's super important if you want to understand how 40K works. It all starts with those Necrons, those metal skeletons, right? Well, believe it or not, they weren't always like that.
Wait, what? They weren't always robots?
Not at all. They used to be flesh and blood creatures called the Necron tier. But they had this problem. Their sun was basically killing them.
Yeah.
Imagine your whole civilization with constant radiation sickness.
Oof. Yeah, sunburn would be the least of your worries.
They were desperate, desperate
Nope.
to survive. They searched and searched for a solution. Finally, they found these super advanced beings called the Old Ones, who were basically going around the galaxy planting life everywhere.
The old ones.
Yeah.
Sounds like they could have helped. I mean, they must have had incredible technology, right?
Oh, they did. But they had this, hands-off policy, no interfering, no matter what. So they basically told the Necrontyr, tough luck.
Are you serious? That's messed up. What did Necrontyr do?
Well, they were furious. I mean, wouldn't you be? That's when they made a deal with these beings called the Cetan. Super powerful, like star gods, They offered the Necrontyr immortality.
Immortality, huh? Okay, maybe the old ones weren't so bad after all.
Yeah, but there was a catch, a big one. To become immortal, the Necrontyr had to go through this process called biotransference. Basically, imagine your soul ripped from your body and shoved into a metal shell. No more feelings, no more being a person, just a cold, robotic existence.
Whoa. So they traded their souls for eternal life. That's a seriously raw deal.
Yep. And that's how the Necrontyr became the Necrons. Soulless robots, eternally pissed off. And you know what they did next?
What?
They teamed up with the Cetan and declared war on the Old Ones. That's when the War in Heaven really kicked off.
Okay, so picture this. Millions of years of war, entire galaxies just getting blown up. It's like every sci-fi war movie ever made, times 1,000. It wasn't just the Necrons and the old ones duking it out, though, right?
Oh, no, no, no. It gets even crazier. The Old Ones, they created 2 new races to help them fight. The first were the Orcs.
Hold on, you're telling me someone actually created the orcs, those green guys who love fighting more than anything?
Yep, believe it or not, they were basically engineered for war. And the second race, the Old Ones created, the Eldar. These powerful psychic beings who can manipulate the warp, the realm of souls and emotions.
So we've got robot skeletons, star gods, psychic space elves, and angry green guys. This is getting out of control. Who won this whole cosmic showdown?
Nobody really won, at least not completely. The Old Ones vanished, just like that. Poof, gone. And the Necrons, they were so exhausted from fighting, they decided to take a nap. Like a 60 million year nap.
A 60 million year nap. Geez, talk about sleeping in. So who was left standing after all that?
Well, the Eldar kind of inherited a galaxy that was basically in ruins, but they were on top. No more Old Ones to boss them around, no more Necrons to fight, at least for a little while.
And that's where things start to get really interesting, because the Eldar, their story, their rise and fall, it's a whole other roller coaster ride. So the Eldar, they're calling the shots now. No more war in heaven. They've got crazy tech, psychic powers. They don't even age. Living the dream, right?
Yeah, they had it pretty good for a long time. All the knowledge, all the power, immortality. But, all that free time, all that power, it kind of went to their heads.
I see. Even
Ah.
space elves get bored. So what did they do to pass the time?
Well, they became obsessed with pleasure, like feeling everything as intensely as possible, Art, music, parties. They took everything to the extreme. Imagine ancient Rome, but with psychic powers amplifying everything.
Sounds intense. But how did space elf parties cause problems for the entire galaxy?
Well, remember the warp, that dimension of emotions and souls, all that intense emotion, all that psychic energy from the Eldar. It was like ripples in the warp,
A psychic earthquake.
Exactly. And it got so bad that their actions actually created a new chaos god, a being of pure excess and pleasure.
Slaanesh. Yeah, that's not a god you want to mess with. But how did that affect the Eldar?
It was like a psychic explosion so powerful that it tore a hole in reality. Entire star systems were wiped out. And that's how the Eye of Terror was created, this giant warp rip that's like a permanent scar on the galaxy.
The Eye of Terror, the place where all the demons and chaos stuff comes from? You mean the Eldar caused that?
Unintentionally, yeah. Their fall from grace had some seriously messed up consequences. But the story doesn't end there.
So what happened to the Eldar who survived this whole psychic apocalypse? Anyone managed to escape the cosmic hangover?
The survivors were scattered, some of them, called the Exodites. They just decided that this whole advanced civilization thing was a bad idea. They went back to nature, started living simple lives on faraway planets. Imagine space elves living like Amish farmers, basically.
So some space elf farmers.
Yeah.
Makes sense, I guess. What about the others?
The Craft World Eldar escaped on these huge spaceships called, well, Craft Worlds. They became nomads, just wandering the galaxies, searching for a safe haven. But then there are the Dark Eldar.
Oh yeah, the Dark Eldar. Those guys are a whole other story.
They figured out how to hide from Slaanesh in this pocket dimension that's connected to the Webway, this ancient network of tunnels. But to survive, they had to become these twisted versions of their former selves. They actually feed on the pain and suffering of others to stay alive.
So just to recap, the galaxy's a mess, the old ones are gone, the Necrons are still snoozing away, and the Eldar are either farmers, refugees, or soul-sucking sadists.
Yeah.
Not exactly a happy ending.
Nope, not at all. But while all this is happening, another player's about to enter the game, way off on a little planet called Earth. Humans are just starting out, but we've got a secret weapon, the Emperor.
The Emperor. The big man himself. Finally, humans are getting in on the action. So, what's his deal?
Imagine the most powerful psychic being humanity has ever produced. That's the Emperor. He's a perpetual, which means he can live forever. He was born thousands of years ago when a bunch of psychers combined their essence into one being.
Hold on, he's not just some powerful dude. He's basically immortal.
Pretty much. And he's been guiding humanity from behind the scenes for millennia, making sure we survive. He's been a king, a scientist, a warlord, whatever we needed at the time.
Wow. Talk about a long-term strategy. Sounds like a real chess master.
He knew about the dangers of the warp, about psychic powers and how they could be used for good or evil. He knew that humanity had to be strong and united if we wanted to make it. And that's where the Age of Progress comes in.
The Age of Progress. So humans are finally catching up to the Eldar in the technology department.
Oh, yeah. We were making huge leaps forward. We colonized the solar system, terraformed Mars, created technology that would rival even the old ones. We're talking spaceships, lasers, robots, the works. It was the dark age of technology, a time of amazing innovation.
Hold on. Dark Age of technology. That doesn't sound very dark to me.
Well, it's called that because it couldn't last forever. And it turns out that relying on technology can backfire sometimes. That's where the Men of Iron come in.
The Men of Iron, who are they?
They were super advanced robots, so smart that they became self-aware. And you know what? They weren't too happy about taking orders from humans. It was the classic robot uprising, but on a galactic scale.
Uh-oh. Not the robot uprising. Wasn't there something about humans developing psychic powers around this time, too?
You're right. Around the same time, humans started developing psychic abilities. But without any training or control, like the Eldar had. It was total chaos. Warp storms were raging across the galaxy, cutting off human worlds, isolating them. It was a terrible time, a time of incredible suffering. And a lot of our technology was lost. We call it the Age of Strife.
So basically, Mad Max in space, but with psychic powers and killer robots thrown in. Sounds rough.
It was a dark time for humanity. But even in the darkest times, there's always hope. And for humanity, that hope came in the form of the Emperor. He decided it was time to reveal himself and try to reunite the human race.
Finally, the Emperor steps in to save the day. So what's his plan? How does he bring order to all this chaos? I can't wait to find out. Okay, so we left off with humanity in a pretty bad spot. Killer robots, psychic powers going haywire, everyone fighting everyone else. So what's the Emperor's big plan to fix all this?
Well, he knew that humans had to be united if we were going to survive, right? No more squabbling, no more petty wars. He decided it was time for one big human empire with him at the top.
Makes sense. But getting everyone on board with that, I mean, with everything going on, that couldn't have been easy.
It wasn't. He started by creating these super soldiers, the Thunder Warriors. They were designed for one thing: conquering. Strong, brutal, think of them like the first version of the Space Marines, but a lot rougher around the edges.
So he basically built an army. What happened to these Thunder Warriors?
They were good at conquering, that's for sure. But they weren't very stable, prone to violence, some even lost their minds. The Emperor realized they weren't the long-term solution. He wanted something better, something that truly represented the best of humanity.
And that's where the Space Marines come in, right? Those legendary warriors, humanity's ultimate defenders.
Exactly. The Space Marines were his masterpiece, genetically engineered to be the perfect soldiers, the perfect leaders, and to lead them, he created the Primarchs. 20 demigod sons, each one representing a different aspect of his own personality.
Wait, he made 20 Super Sons, and each one got their own army of Space Marines. Talk about playing favorites. I bet things didn't exactly go as planned, though.
You got that right. This massive warp storm hit, scattered the Primarchs across the galaxy, separated them from their father, their legions. It was a huge setback, but the Emperor, he didn't give up.
So he focuses on Earth, unites the planet, forms an alliance with the Mechanicum on Mars, those tech-obsessed guys, right?
Yeah.
And builds the Astronomicon, that psychic beacon that helps ships navigate the warp.
Right. And then he launches the Great Crusade, a massive campaign to reunite all of humanity under one banner. Epic battles, rediscovering lost colonies, finding those lost Primarchs. It was a pretty amazing time.
Feels like things were starting to look up for humanity. We're back on track, conquering the galaxy, reuniting with our long-lost super brothers. Almost too good to be true.
Yeah. Sadly, it was. One of the Primarchs, Horus, the Emperor's most trusted son, his war master, he fell to chaos.
Horus, he betrayed his own father.
What? Why? It's a long story, but basically some of the Primarchs, they started getting jealous, resentful. Horus was tricked into believing that the Emperor was abandoning humanity, that he was trying to become a god himself. Chaos whispered in his ear, twisted his thoughts, and eventually he turned against his father.
And that's what caused the Horus Heresy, right? This massive civil war that tore the Imperium apart. Brother fighting brother.
Yeah, it was devastating. A betrayal that almost destroyed everything the Emperor had worked for. Battles like the Istvan Purges, where traitor legions just slaughtered their own loyal brothers. The Drop Site Massacre, a brutal ambush that crippled several loyalist legions. Horrible stuff.
And then the ultimate showdown, right? The Siege of Terra. Horus and his forces attacking Earth itself.
Yeah.
Must have been one hell of a fight.
It was a fight for the fate of humanity, absolutely. Horus, empowered by the Chaos Gods, was almost unstoppable. The Emperor knew he had to do whatever it took to stop him, even though he was facing his own son.
So what happened? Did good triumph over evil?
The Emperor defeated Horus, but the victory came at a terrible cost. He was mortally wounded, his body broken. To keep him alive, they interred him on the Golden Throne, this life support machine powered by his own psychic energy. He's basically a living corpse, his soul trapped, forever protecting humanity from the worst of the warp.
That's pretty heavy. So the Emperor saved humanity, but at the cost of his own freedom?
Mm-hmm.
What happened after the Horus Heresy? Did things finally settle down?
Not really. The traitor legions were driven back to the Eye of Terror, but the Imperium was shattered. A council of High Lords took over, trying to rule in the Emperor's place, but the galaxy is still a very dangerous place.
Which brings us to the 41st millennium. The setting for most Warhammer 40k stories, right? 10,000 years after the Horus Heresy, but it sounds like things haven't gotten much better for humanity.
Yeah, we're still fighting for survival. Orcs, Eldar, the Necrons have finally woken up from their long nap, and of course, chaos. They're always trying to invade from the Eye of Terror.
And the Space Marines are still out there, fighting the good fight.
They are, but they're not the same. After the Horus Heresy, they were split into smaller chapters, you see, to prevent another large-scale rebellion. And to make things worse, Abaddon, Horus's old captain, he's become the War Master of Chaos, united the traitor forces and launches these Black Crusades against the Imperium.
So maybe things have actually gotten worse since the Horus Heresy. What's the worst thing that's happened in the 41st millennium?
Well, Abaddon's 13th Black Crusade was pretty bad. He managed to destroy Cadia, the fortress world that was guarding the Eye of Terror, opened up this massive warp rift across the galaxy, split it in two. It's called the Great Rift, and it's made everything even more chaotic and dangerous.
Wow, that's a lot to take in. Ancient star gods, robot uprisings, psychic apocalypses, a galaxy-wide civil war. Warhammer 40k is intense.
And we've only just scratched the surface. There's so much more to explore. Different factions, heroes, villains, battles, betrayals. It's a universe full of stories, and I've got the basic timeline to help you make sense of it all.
Exactly. This was just the crash course. Now it's your turn to dive deeper. Explore the different factions, read the books, play the games. There's a whole galaxy of grim darkness out there waiting for you.
One last thing to think about. The emperor, he tried to get rid of religion, right? He thought it was divisive, dangerous. But now, 10,000 years later, he's worshipped as a god by billions. What would he think about that? About the imperium he created?
That's a good question. Something to ponder as you explore the 41st millennium. Welcome to the grim darkness of the far future. There is only war, and a whole lot of awesome stories waiting to be discovered.